How's it going, my bones? SilverDFanng back with more YouTube reactions. So good, I had to say it twice. So I'm a big wrestling fan, and I wanted to show more of my culture, wrestling. Cultaholic, Rise and Fall of All Japan Pro Wrestling. I think people from the West don't really know too much about the Japanese scene. Now it's getting more, but like the Japan wrestling scene's been around since like the 50s, and it is so insane. North American wrestling is insane. Japanese wrestling is even crazier. And this is one of their biggest So this is Cultaholic.
The greatest trick that...
This is Cultaholic, the rise and fall of All Japan Pro Wrestling.
Devil ever pulled was to convince humankind that he does not exist, then the greatest trick modern New Japan have pulled is convincing people that they are the be-all and end-all in Japanese professional wrestling, and always were. But while...
At the moment, DDT and Noah is actually coming up a lot.
New Japan today stand head and shoulders above every other promotion in the land of the rising sun. That wasn't always the case, as for the latter part of the 20th century, they enjoyed a compelling rivalry with All Japan Pro Wrestling. The two promotions battling it out to see who would reign as Japan's top dog.
And how it ends for All Japan is fascinating.
All Japan was the bigger of the two promotions from day one, and would battle NJPW for the top spot for the better part of 30 years. From the Barbar versus the World years, through the Saruta Tenryu dynasties, to the hallowed Four Pillars of Heaven, All Japan became a byword for incredible wrestling, fighting spirit, and the breathtaking but highly hazardous King's Road style. But all good times must end eventually, and where All Japan once ran sold-out shows at Budokan Hall and inside the Tokyo Dome and shattered attendance records, it now battles for relevancy in a wrestling world that has all but passed them by. All Japan's fall was drastic, but how did things go so wrong for such a respected and at times untouchable promotion? I'm Ross Tweddle from Cultaholic.com, and this is the rise and fall of All Japan Pro Wrestling. Join us. The JWA. Pro wrestling's initial success in Japan is pretty much all down to one man, Rikidozan, a Korean...
So Rikidozan, pretty much, if you are into wrestling, but more importantly Japanese wrestling, is the godfather, grandfather of Japanese wrestling.
Japanese sumo competitor Rikidozan made the switch to pro wrestling in the early 1950s and quickly became a phenomenon. Combine the popularity of peak Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, and The Rock, and you get something close to what Rikidozan was in Japan. Quite simply a megastar and treasured national hero. Rikidozan established the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance in 1953, and alongside wrestling and promoting, he started training a new generation of pro wrestlers inside the JWA dojo alongside the legendary Karl Gotch. The most notable JWA dojo class commenced in 1960 and would feature Rikidozan's greatest ever pupils, rookie sensation Antonio Inoki and the 6'10" former professional baseball player Shohei Giant Barbar. After Rikidozan's tragic death,
who are also legends in their own right,
in 1963, Barbar became the undisputed star of JWA, with Inoki firmly in his shadow. Inoki would promptly go on an excursion to the USA, then would join Tokyo Pro Wrestling in order to forge his own path, until returning to the JWA in 1967 after Tokyo Pro went out of business. With Barbar and Inoki as the two biggest homegrown draws in the country, especially when teaming together as B.I. Cannon, business ticked along nicely for the JWA. Inoki wanted more though, attempting a hostile takeover of the promotion in 1971, but was promptly sacked when the takeover failed. Undeterred, Big Jin Tony said sod this and formed New Japan Pro Wrestling in 1970.
Yep, the biggest wrestling corporation in Japan was an FU. If you've seen my podcast, Most wrestling companies' growth is because they hate another pro wrestling company.
72. Unfortunately for the JWA, 1972 would only get worse when Baba decided not to renew his contract and split off to form All Japan Pro Wrestling with Ricky Dozan's sons. Without the two biggest stars in the country carrying the load, JWA folded in 1973. All Japan takes off.
Damn.
In the wake of Baba and Inoki leaving JWA, there was a mass exodus of talent, with many hitching their wagons to All Japan due to Baba's immense popularity at the time, coupled with All Japan signing a TV deal with Nippon TV. Baba established the Pacific Wrestling Federation as All Japan's governing body. And after beating the likes of Bruno Sammartino, Bobo Brazil and others, Baba was installed as the first ever PWF World Champion. He held that belt for over 5 years, because of course he did. Despite the PWF title sitting as All Japan's main championship for 15 years, it vied for attention with a number of NWA titles due to a firm partnership between All Japan and the NWA, mirroring the relationship Ricky Dozan's JWA enjoyed with the American governing body. This partnership paved a road into Japan for many top American stars, with the likes of the Funk Brothers, Bruiser Brody, and Stan Hansen reaching megastar status due to their work in All Japan.
A lot of these people, bigger in Japan to this day, like there are 56-year-old men who still love Stan Hansen, this just burly, big, pacey cowboy from America.
As the promotion followed the Ricky Dozan booking philosophy of Japan versus the world, something that certainly struck a chord with domestic audiences in the wake of the Second World War. The partnership between AJPW and the NWA went two ways, with Baba himself ending Jack Briscoe's year-long NWA World's title reign. Baba would go on to have 3 reigns with the 10 pounds of gold, even though he would only hold it for a couple of weeks across all 3 of those reigns. It all helped to further build the legend of Baba as an all-conquering Japanese hero. As All Japan entered the 80s, Baba was still riding high as the promotion's unchallenged top star. But he had an eye on the future, pushing his students Jumbo Tsuruta, Genichiro Tenryu, and his protege, All Japan's junior heavyweight Atsushi Onita. With the 3 having successful excursions in the States, a rite of passage for any would-be Japanese star, before returning to take All Japan into a new era. Whilst Onita would eventually retire due to multiple injuries, before being reborn as an absolute head case with a penchant for
that is a video on its own. What this man does in Japanese wrestling is a clusterfuck of a story.
Explosion barbed wire death matches, Tenryu and Jumbo slowly rose up the ranks to the main event position, whilst an aging Baba stepped down the card in order to focus more on the organization's booking and behind-the-scenes business. The rise of the King's Road. Throughout the 80s, All Japan remained in contention to be the top promotion in Japan. While NJPW had bigger gates and the groundbreaking junior heavyweight division setting it apart, All Japan still boasted some of the biggest stars in the country. As gaijin like the Road Warriors and Stan Hansen reached demigod status, All Japan started to attract some of the best of New Japan's native stars over to the blue and red side, with Riki Choshu and Hiro Saito crossing over to rub shoulders with the likes of Masanobu Fuchi, whilst Baba oversaw the development of his greatest students. But more on them in a minute. Choshu's arrival, in particular, helped change All Japan's style, as his no-nonsense approach to Inoki's shoot-fight-inspired strong style blended with Baba's emphasis on traditional NWA-style in-ring storytelling, forming the foundation for the spectacular and often really dangerous King's Road style that took All Japan to new heights. Business remained strong, but as the NWA slowly fell apart in the States,
because the WWF started to become its own company and pretty much destroy what the NWA has created,
Baba split from the organization. This split from the NWA meant that Baba would have to focus on more homegrown talent. but could still rely on foreign freelancers like Hansen, Terry Gordy, and every other barrel-chested bad boy who could punch people as hard as humanly possible. Indeed, Bar doubled down on All Japan, practically cutting the promotion off from the rest of the wrestling world so they could focus solely on themselves. As part of the split from the NWA, All Japan unveiled a new main prize, the Triple Crown. Comprised of the PWF, NWA International Heavyweight, and the NWA United National Championships, All Japan's ace, Jumbo Tsuruta, would be the first man to hold all three, unifying the titles after beating Stan Hansen in 1989. Now positioned as the top stars of the organization, Jumbo and Tenryu would trade the Triple Crown before Tenryu would butt heads with Bar, eventually leading an exodus from All Japan in order to form the short-lived Super World of Sports.
I love that logo. That is a beautiful logo.
Promotion. With a glasses company of all things. As the super rich new promotion partnered with the WWF, amongst others. Tenryu's exit would anger Bar so much that he decreed that Tenryu would not be allowed to step foot in an All Japan ring for as long as Bar was alive and in control of the organization. He was the chosen
How
one.
long did that
And
last?
to that point, the only Japanese wrestler to have ever pinned Bar in All Japan, a feat that would be accomplished by only one other man. The timing of Tenryu's exit could not have been worse, as despite his position as All Japan's ace, Jumbo Tsuruta would also start to move down the card due to failing health. Luckily for All Japan, there was a boom period on the horizon due to the four aces they had up their sleeve, the Four Pillars of Heaven. The Four Pillars of Heaven. The Four Pillars would come to exemplify Bar's booking philosophy and would pave the King's Road with blood, sweat, and many broken bones. You had the permanently pissed off Dangerous K, Toshiaki Kawada, a man with about 3 teeth and a love for kicking people harder than an angry Alan Shearer. Shearer! There was the underrated judoka, Akira Taue, a giant of a man who would chokeslam anything that moved.
Ooh.
The super babyface Kenta Kobashi, a man the size of a bus who would take everything you threw at him only to rise up and send your head to the moon. And the jewel of the entire promotion, Mitsuharu Misawa. Pound for pound, the best wrestler of his generation, and certainly in the conversation when it comes to GOAT talk. Misawa had spent the latter half of the 80s wrestling as the highly influential Tiger Mask 2 after All Japan had bought the rights to the gimmick from New Japan. But his popularity exploded when he unmasked mid-match to dish out elbows left, right, and center. Bar noticed the massive support Misawa was gaining from the audience and booked him to face Jumbo Tsuruta in singles competition, deciding at the last minute that the Emerald Sensation would go over the former Triple Crown champion. Jumbo wasn't sure if losing at that time was the right move, and allegedly sent a message asking if he could lose by disqualification, a rarity in Japan, to which Bar bluntly replied, no. It turned out to be a wise move by Bar.
No, stupid.
With the Four Pillars leading the way, All Japan hit their highest heights commercially and critically, with singles and tag matches involving the four heralded as some of the greatest matches of all time. Indeed, if you subscribe to Mr. Dave Meltzer's opinions,
Dave Meltzer is probably the most long tenured and highly rated wrestling reviewer since the 80s. He has his own star system called the Meltzer system that people still believe, well, not believe in, but still look at today.
Crop of wrestlers have had any more 5-star matches than Misawa and Kobashi, with the pairs matches against the holy demon army of Taue and Kawada in the mid-90s the purest examples of the King's Road style. Soon storylines became secondary, and even though New Japan was at this point the clear #1 promotion in the Far East, All Japan was the critical darling, known for putting on the undisputed best matches in the world. The King's Road style enthralled and influenced many. But as the matches went longer and longer and audience fever increased, the style became increasingly more dangerous, to the point where it could be summed up as drop each other on the head as much as possible in a 40-minute period.
Yeah, in the West, this is kind of like what ECW did, which was just the edgy extreme, except ECW did it with objects. All Japan just uses their bodies.
All you have to do is look up Kawada's Ganzo Bomb, Misawa's Tiger Driver 91, and Kabashi's awe-inspiring Burning Hammer to see exactly what I mean. Outside the four pillars, you had...
Oh, that man's neck. Ooh, God, that man's neck.
Foreign stars like Dr. Death Steve Williams, Johnny Ace, and Gary Albright all contributing, whilst Giant Barbar and Jumbo Tsuruta still laced up their boots to compete in multi-man matches lower down the card, lending their star power but staying away from the spots reserved for the new generation. Business was so good at this time that All Japan sold out over 250 consecutive shows in Tokyo alone, with All Japan running the Budokan multiple times a year. They would sell out the next show while the current one was taking place. Fans flocking to buy tickets and relive the experience all over again.
I haven't watched a lot, but I've seen a couple of the Four Pillars matches. For the 90s, it is top-notch. It is almost modern-day wrestling, which is really nice to look at.
Despite his preference for running Budokan and Korakuen Hall, Barbar relented and ran a rare Tokyo Dome show in 1998, drawing over 58,000 fans despite the wrestling boom having cooled off somewhat as compared to years earlier. Barbar would still wrestle into his 60s, but his health was deteriorating. And on January 31st, 1999, Shohei Barbar died of liver failure.
Rest in peace, you beautiful creature, you.
From complications relating to colon cancer at just 61 years of age. Given his status as something of a national hero in Japan, there was a considerable public mourning in the wake of Barbar's death, with over 28,000 attending a memorial.
Are those roses or fish? This image makes it look like people just threw full salmon. It's like, here, God King Baba, take these fish to your afterlife.
Service in his honor in April of 1999. With Barbar's death, Misawa was promoted to All Japan president after earlier being made head booker, but all things would soon turn sour. The Exodus. Barbar's widow, Motoko Barbar, wanted Mitsuo Momota, Riki Dozan's son and a longtime wrestler who had risen to become vice president, to become president in full. But All Japan board member Jumbo Tsuruta used his considerable influence to get Misawa in the seat, before Jumbo himself was forced out of the company with no severance package. Misawa and Motoko Barbar clashed frequently in a quiet power struggle, with the pair having never seen eye to eye. Motoko allegedly disagreed with Giant Barbar, making Misawa the ace of the company in the 90s. And despite Motoko being majority shareholder of AJPW with an 85% controlling stake, most of the company privately sided with Misawa. The two would clash more frequently as 1999 wore on, with Misawa wanting to change age.
By the way, her husband just died, and her first action is to fight this man that pretty much helped the company survive for the whole 90s.
JPW's direction and push younger talents like Jun Akiyama, whilst Motoko wanted to honor Giant Barbar's legacy and adopt a conservative approach to AJPW's future, realizing that the company was then on a downswing. Misawa approached Nippon TV at some point in 1999 and informed them that he would be leaving All Japan and was confident that the locker room would follow. Nippon TV, who owned the other 15% of All Japan, sided with Misawa, but wanted to keep everything hush-hush for a year. So there was enough distance from Giant Barbar's death before the split was to take flight. In the ring, it was business as usual, with Vader getting in on the Triple Crown action and naturally belting people very hard.
Also, if you want to see this man's acting career, he was in an episode of Boy Meets World. I'm not even kidding.
And dropping them on their bastard heads. But behind the scenes, it was becoming more fraught with each passing day, with box office business starting to drop. After Misawa was unable to make proposed reforms to All Japan contracts in order to provide health cover and injury pay as well as stock options for contract.
In the 2000s, that's unheard of. That's fucking amazing, and that's human rights and like awesome.
To players, he was removed from his position as president by the All Japan Executive Board in May 2000. Misawa allegedly tried a peaceful transition and wanted Motoko to give a public blessing for Misawa to leave and start a new company. Due to his respect for Giant Baba and due to the recent death of Jumbo Tsuruta. But Motoko refused and did not give a public blessing to
What a bitch.
Misawa's exit. Later saying that Misawa took no responsibility and abandoned his duty in a written press release.
You tried to remove this man's ability. You didn't trust him from the beginning, and you made his life a living hell.
Misawa's ousting was revealed by the press on June the 12th.
Hey, King.
And on June the 13th,
been, bud?
an emergency meeting was held by the All Japan Non-Executive Board, with Kenta Kobashi, Akira Taue, Mitsuo Momota, Yoshihiro Momota, the oldest son of Riki Dozan, and Kenichi Oyagi, the managing director of All Japan, all formally resigning from their positions.
God damn.
The fallout was quite simply catastrophic. Toshiaki Kawada and Masa Fuchi stayed loyal to All Japan, but the rest of the contracted locker room and the majority of the front office sided with Misawa and departed the company, with Triple Crown champion Kobashi forfeiting the title as a result. To put this in perspective, imagine if during the Ruthless Aggression era, The Undertaker and Triple H remained with WWE, but Eddie, Jericho, Angle, Brock, Edge, Mysterio, Cena, and every other major name departed. It would have spelled certain doom for WWE. Misawa held a press conference to announce the creation of Pro Wrestling Noah,
Damn.
named in allusion to the
That's a lot
biblical
of
story,
hours.
a new promotion that would allow wrestlers to move forward in a modern style.
Noah still around and actually, honestly, really solid work. Like, they're not as like shiny as New Japan, but like Noah does some real good wrestling.
Nippon TV cancelled All Japan's slot, which it had held for 27 years, and announced they would be airing Noah instead. And, as they still had that 15% stake in All Japan, they had the veto power to keep AJPW from ever being on a new network. Quite simply, All Japan were buggered. Misawa's exit was very similar to how Giant Baba split from JWA and started All Japan back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And time would tell if All Japan would
He respected and learned from the greats.
meet the same fate as the JWA. Pro Wrestling Love. Noah's start was rocky, but they eventually found their groove, with Misawa, Kobashi, Taue, Yoshihiro Takayama, and Jun Akiyama putting on clinics, while junior heavyweight stars Kenta and Naomichi Marufuji blazed their own paths. They would soon grow into the #2 promotion in the country. As for All Japan,
So there.
after the Noah crew wrestled their final contracted shows and officially departed, and after Stan Hansen retired from in-ring competition, it was rebuilding time. Motoko Baba announced the unthinkable. Genichiro Tenryu would be returning to All Japan for the first time in 10 years, despite Giant Baba saying Tenryu would never step foot in an All Japan ring again after his decision in 1990. Even more unthinkable, All Japan entered a full-on cross-promotional partnership with New Japan, where new ace Kawada would defeat IWGP Heavyweight Champion Kensuke Sasaki in non-title action in front of a sold-out Tokyo Dome.
Damn.
The relationship
That
between
sounds
the
good.
two companies would last until 2002, with New Japan
So,
icon
a year.
Keiji Muto shockingly defecting to All Japan after the January 4th Tokyo Dome show, with Satoshi Kojima and Kendo Kashin following suit. During All Japan's 30th anniversary party in September 2002, Motoko Baba instated Muto as the new president and transferred all Baba family stock to him, allegedly angering Tenryu, who felt he should have taken over rather than New Japan's fabled musketeer. This period under Muto was known as the Pro Wrestling Love era, with the Mist Master aggressively hunting down merchandise and opportunities and forging cross-promotional relationships in order to repair All Japan's financial state
Smart.
and remind the Japanese audience that All Japan were still a force to be reckoned with. The working agreement with New Japan was restored, and we finally had a champion versus champion dream match, where Triple Crown champion Satoshi Kojima defeated Hiroyoshi Tenzan for the IWG.
Kojima's still wrestling today, by the way. Like, dude's in his 50s, and I'm not gonna say it's his best work, but it's still some really enjoyable matches.
EP Heavyweight Championship. This partnership would foster the cross-promotional Wrestle Kingdom 1 in 2007. Taking place at the traditional January 4th New Japan Pro Wrestling Tokyo Dome show, while All Japan would also forge a relationship with the growing TNA in the USA. Surprisingly, All Japan would even work with Pro Wrestling Noah, with Muto wrestling in the famed Green Ring, whilst Misawa would return for several AJPW matches in 2004. This partnership would eventually see Kawada and Misawa have one last high-profile clash in 2005 in a Noah ring. Despite Muto negotiating a new TV deal, pushing the likes of Suwama and Joe Doring, and even battling for the #1 spot with the ever-growing Noah, and a battered post-Enochiism New Japan, All Japan was simply no longer the force it once was. Muto's work was admirable, but he would step down as president in 2011, taking full responsibility for a backstage fight between
Muto's a legend, and Muto tried his best.
Yoshikazu Taru and Nobukazu Hirai, which caused Hirai to suffer a stroke.
Jesus!
Muto would sell the promotion in 2012 for 200 million yen, about $1.7 million when adjusted for inflation, before leaving altogether in 2013 following disagreements with the new owners, Speed Partners Corporation, after they removed Muto's longtime right-hand man, Masayuki Uchida, from his position as All Japan's president, with Speed Partners Nobuo Shiraishi installing himself as president, despite having no background in pro wrestling.
Of course.
Muto allegedly tried to buy back the company, but when that failed, he led an exodus of talent to form Wrestle One, and All Japan was once again...
It doesn't matter if it's in Japan, it doesn't matter if it's in America. Wrestlers that feel like that they're being jaded will just take their ball, go home, and create their new court.
In crisis, with fans turning out in their droves. Wrestling simply wasn't as big as it was in the 80s and 90s, or even in the early 2000s.
The 2010s was a dark period for wrestling globally.
With the tragic in-ring death of Misawa in 2009, and the Yakuza scandal that rocked Noah like it had FM...
Did not know about the Yakuza. I know about FMW, but did not know about Noah and Yakuza.
Before it, outside of the diehards, wrestling was on life support in Japan, and would remain that way until New Japan's resurgence a few years later. All Japan today. All Japan's ownership basically became a confusing hot potato after the Muto scandal. First, in 2013, all AJPW shares were moved from Speed Partners to Shiraishi's Red Wall Japan Corporation, with the company name changing to Zen Nihon Pro Wrestling Systems.
And not as catchy.
Shiraishi then stepped down as president, but would remain owner of All Japan.
Of course he would.
Then, a year...
I want to make money, but it turns out I'm a dum-dum.
Later, Shiraishi changed his mind and wanted out. Fifth Pillar of Heaven Jun Akiyama took over as president after returning from Noah a year earlier. Then, shortly after, the company changed names again to All Japan Pro Wrestling Kabushiki
Too much.
Gaisha, and relocated from Tokyo to Yokohama. In layman's terms, Akiyama formed a new company, with the original All Japan founded by Baba in 1972 legally and technically dead after Shiraishi's bungled ownership. Akiyama had the IPs, the belts, all the good stuff that you want, but officially this was a whole new company, but it was still called All Japan. Are you still with me?
Kind of.
Please say you are.
Kind of.
Hello? Under Akiyama, All Japan started to yo-yo dramatically, with big stars joining, big stars leaving, Motoko Baba returning to inject some money into the promotion before leaving after clashing with Akiyama as she once did Misawa. Akiyama eventually steadied the ship, with All Japan becoming a steady, good if not unspectacular promotion, inking new TV deals and launching a streaming service. This new All Japan is under no illusions as to where it stands in the current pro wrestling landscape, cementing itself as something of a Japanese super indie. Rather than try a TNA circa 2010 and go headfirst into a war with the uncatchable New Japan Pro Wrestling. Akiyama's goal as president was simply to keep the company alive. and he achieved that handedly before stepping down from the position in 2019 and ultimately leaving All Japan for DDT Pro in 2021. But with the average attendances hovering around the 600 mark, All Japan is simply just another promotion in a crowded landscape, rather than the groundbreaking force it once was. In All Japan's defense, they have...
In comparison, it's very much like NWA in today. Very important to the wrestling history, but not important today.
Have successfully built several new stars in recent times. Most notably, Kento Miyahara, who at 33 is already a 5-time Triple Crown holder. They still do well whenever they run Korakuen Hall, and they are celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. A feat which seemed improbable after the great exodus of the year 2000. And for most of the last 20 years, if we're all honest. However, with each new president, every sale of Family Silver and reimagining of the product, All Japan decreases in size and in relevance. And it will surely take a miracle now to boost them back to the top of the Japanese scene. So here's to you, All Japan Pro Wrestling, with your legendary matches and fighting spirit, refusing to die after Misawa and company left you in the dust. May you once again scale the mountain and regain your past glories, but preferably in a far, far safer way than walking the King's Road once again.
There you go. Legendary made some great, King Road is scary, but literally that's what really brought in this modern style of wrestling we see today, is what All Japan was doing in the 90s. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Check me out on Twitch, SilverDFanng, 2 N's in Fang. Check me out on Twitter and Blue Sky under the same name. Also TikTok. Have a great night.